Liv was dead to begin with. Seriously, that's how the show opens. Post Mortem, No One Dies in Skarnes, is a Norwegian dark comedy that's come to Netflix. Can this show pull off the combo of dark comedy and mystery? A woman is declared dead, but hours later she suddenly wakes up on the forensic table with a dark, insatiable hunger that has awoken inside her. Meanwhile, her brother tries to keep the family funeral home afloat, but the stagnant death rate in the small Norwegian town of Skarnes makes it impossible. So Liv is discovered dead in a field and, surprisingly to everyone, wakes up on the autopsy table. She now has some weird urges and characteristics that overtake her at times, and she's trying to figure out what's going on with her. During all this, her brother Odd is trying to save the family funeral home business, but it's suffering badly because, as Odd often says, no one dies in Skarnes. There are several dark comedic moments in this 6-episode season that made me laugh and chuckle numerous times. So throughout the show, we get hints at what has happened to Liv. Clues to her life are uncovered and doled out to us in small chunks. I had one or two theories as to what her condition could be, but the show never really lands on a solid reason. At first it was kind of bothering me, but then I figured if I looked at what was happening to her as just some mysterious ailment, I didn't necessarily need a concrete reason why. While it would have been nice to know, the crux of the show doesn't really rely on us knowing exactly what it is. The story really looks more at relationships and the struggle between people. So like I said, Odd is trying to save the family business, but it's an almost futile situation. He's got a great relationship with his wife, and they're wonderful together. They have charisma, and even when there's conflict, they're sympathetic and supportive, which makes them enjoyable to watch. Now, Liv seems to have strained relationships with just about everyone. She struggles with a relationship with her ex-boyfriend, who's also a cop in their town. She and Reinhardt are strained, and he still, though, somewhat pines over her. And I like that he's a cop's cop. He is by the book, and he always wants to do the best job possible. Now later, these ideals come into conflict with situations, and at that portion of the story, I found it amusing to watch. Liv has an oil and water rapport with the other cop in the town, Judith. Judith is suspicious by nature, and she's very observant, so when she notices weird things with Liv, it causes some tension. Liv also has a weird relationship with her doctor, and we get the sense that he's been around the town for a really long time, and he knows most of the residents' secrets. When Liv wakes up on the table, she's a little off, and the doctor notices it and then begins to keep tabs on her, weirding her out even more. Now, the characters are all shrouded in some sort of doubt or intrigue. All of their actions could be classified as shady, just depending on the angle that you take. Odd, though, has this frustratingly pure conscience, which torments him anytime he veers off of the straight and narrow. So when opportunities arise to save the business, but they may involve some shadiness or even just trying to upsell someone items for a funeral, his own spirit eats at him, knowing he's going against what he knows is right. This is a great complication to add to the story. It rears its head in several situations, which then works to increase the drama. Each of the 6 episodes is about 45 minutes, so they're not super short, but they're also not too long to binge the whole thing in one sitting. I found the pace to be mostly consistent and moving, but there were a couple of times in the later episodes where the story did feel like it kind of pumped the brakes a bit. Now, there's a small use of special effects in this, involving Liv's eye color, and I really liked the effect. It didn't look fake, and even several times it was very subtle in its execution, but it still added a nice aesthetic to the show. Now, I enjoyed the cinematography also for the most part. There are some great wide shots to show us expansive landscapes, which then make the characters small, almost in a daunting way. And other times we get some very intimate framings where we're almost uncomfortably close to the subjects, and we're just all up in their personal space. Now, I liked how there were a few scenes that we are chasing a character. Now, it's not shaky cam, but it's not locked down either. It's kind of like on a steady cam that shows some movement to let us be in on the action. And I thought it looked good, and it was a great effect for story immersion. Now, in the final episode, there was some really weird and even out of place footage. The scenes looked like they were filmed on a soundstage with then you have this painted background of the scenery behind them. The lighting looked fake, and there was an unnatural glow around the actors. And even in a driving scene, it looked more fake than any other time in the show. Now, I'm not sure if these were the results of reshoots and they just couldn't get back to the original locations, or maybe the weather had changed so drastically that they just couldn't reproduce the scene that they needed. But whatever the cause, these stood out to me, and not in a good way. So for me, I really like the characters and how the show set them up. Liv is sometimes sympathetic and other times unlikable. and I enjoyed that mix and the uncertainty that came with her. But I didn't ever find her to be a despicable or a character I hated, but I didn't always go along with her actions and ideas either. Judith as the driven but also frustrated officer works well within the drama. Now without her, some of the suspense and anxiety would be lost because there wouldn't be the dogged investigator snooping around. There is a side story that she's involved with, and that one kinda takes a major backseat in the show. After it's established, there are some brief mentions, but there's gotta be more for why it was included. There's also an older mystery that Judith is investigating, and that portion does have me intrigued. I wanted there to be a few more episodes so that we could see more of that play out. Odd is extremely likable. He's simple in some ways, but he's also just a nice guy trying to do the very best he can. He's not confident, almost bumbling, but he's not stupid. There's a naivete that is present for part of his character arc, but we also get to watch some wonderful growth from him. And even if I was frustrated with his mannerisms, he was still the one to root for. So overall, the dark comedy works to provide some discomfort and laughs. And while the mystery is present throughout as to what is affecting Liev, the story doesn't fully rely on the answer as its driving force. I would still like to know if my suspicions were correct, but ultimately I can also accept that the reason is less important than the actions of the players. The family drama is tense, and there is some suspense and thrills thanks to inquisitive characters. I think some of the mysterious aspects were kind of forgotten or tossed by the wayside, which is unfortunate, but perhaps their investigation is being saved for a future season. There's no sex, some nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give Post Mortem, No One Dies in Skarnes, 3.5 out of 5 couches. Have you seen any good dark comedies lately? I'd love to hear what you watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.